Is February 2nd, 2019. I'll be talking about the stuff that we've accomplished on Eternal Swarm throughout 2018. It Well, first of all, when I say we, I'm talking pretty much me and the stream. I stream on Twitch TV, and I get a lot of help or a lot of insight on the game, what people like, what they don't like. And then some people even donate assets to the game, which is really, really cool. Specifically, Sweet Henrik and Uno Maestro. I really, really appreciate your help. So we'll actually be seeing some of their items in the game. Anyway, I've been feeling pretty discouraged about the last year, and I started looking back before doing this video, obviously, on some of the stuff that we've accomplished, and it's actually been a really, really productive year. I'm pretty impressed with the amount of stuff that we've accomplished, so that's quite encouraging. Anyways, I'm going to go through a list, kind of in order, talking about the stuff that was added and stuff that wasn't added. I had thought that I did this for 2017, but it turns out it's just a little bit earlier video. So, anyways, there's going to be kind of a gap in some of the stuff that was added to the game. All in all, not I guess a lot has changed, but not a lot of content to the game has been added as far as story goes. In fact, the story has hardly been touched at all, and needs to be pretty much completely reworked. Anyways, let's get started. The first thing that we tackled early in 2018 was the camera settings. Now, I imagine this whole map that we see right here is going to be redone, but I'm just going to kind of point out stuff that was added as I go through it. So one of the things that, like I said, we updated the, I call it a look at camera. Basically, when an NPC spawns, the camera will look at both the NPC and the player. Oops. So we're going to use this tree as an NPC, but we can see that the camera moves so that the player is always, the player and the thing it's targeting is always on the screen. It's a little wonky. It definitely needs to be touched up, but it stopped the issue where an NPC could be coming from behind the player, or the NPC would walk behind the player, and it made just targeting really, really awkward. So that was the first thing. The next thing I did, maps can now save. Sorry, maps can now save the items on the map. So if or this happened later in the year, but we can now destroy the trees. This actually spawns a spider. I don't I don't feel like fighting him right now. Let me get out of here. Maps can now save items on the map and their current state. So after we destroy a tree, the tree will be obviously destroyed. When the player goes back or leaves the map and then comes back, the tree needs to be in the same state it was in before. So if it was dead, we want it to stay dead until it regrows. So I added that functionality. We added some new programming objects to store the state of certain items on the map. Lighting was improved. I don't know if you can tell that. I've been playing with lighting a lot recently, so I think it looked a little bit better before, but that's a continuous work in progress. Added crafting to the game. This one was pretty big. One of the things that I've been toying with for a while was that the players will be able to craft items. They'll grind for resources, and then they'll be able to, for example, let's say that they cut down a bunch of trees, they get a bunch of wood, and then they'll be able to craft items that they wouldn't actually use in the game. For example, chairs, tables, stuff like that. Excuse me. Um, so as we come to the screen, oh, actually, sorry, this is a new. I must have restarted, but you can buy crafting recipes, and then with your wood resources, you'd be able to craft certain plaids. Then you'd basically be crafting these components. Then you'd come over to the shop over here, and you'd sell those components. And that's how you generate revenue. So the idea is that you're grinding for resources so that you can sell these items that you craft. Um, Sorry, I'm getting way ahead of myself. This was not early in 2018. Well, I guess I'll just continue the thought. So you craft these items, you sell them on your store, and then you get gold. And then with your gold, you can buy better equipment for getting into more dangerous areas. So you can buy a more powerful crossbow or better armor. And with that better armor, you can get into areas that have even more rare resources. So you can craft better items, so you can get more gold. So that's kind of what I'm trying to target. Um, And a lot of early 2018 was building around that sort of idea. So early 2018 was just adding the support for crafting stuff. How's that going to be stored? One of the things that you can do is after you craft, I'm going to use the chair example again. After you craft 100 chairs, and let's say each chair sells for 1 gold piece, then you actually level up that crafting ability. You get really good at crafting chairs, therefore you now can create advanced chairs, and maybe they're worth 2 gold. And after you craft 1,000 of those chairs, and I'm just making these numbers up randomly, then you can create master chairs, and these are really, really high quality chairs, and maybe you sell each one for 3 gold. And so you're going to have a shop over here. Obviously, this will be hopefully redone 3D wise or graphically. After what you're going to do is you're going to put all these chairs in your shop, and then they're going to sell over time, and you can actually advertise your shop to get more customers, and stuff like that. Obviously, this isn't gameplay wise not completely fleshed out. I know the direction I want to go, and I just want to make sure I have all the tools to dial in the funness of this game. Okay, so moving forward, we added crafting into the game. Players can now craft arrows, so they'll be chopping down trees, and then they use the wood to actually craft some of the arrows that they want to throw to kill bad guys. We added the skybox into the game. This skybox will have to be redone because I didn't create it. I just pulled an image off the internet. So I'll have to actually either create an image or find one that is royalty free. Let's see here. So yeah, added the skybox. We added stone resources into the game, which work similarly to the tree. The stones just have more health. You also have to melee attack them in order to get those resources. That's something we added into the game a little bit later. Yeah, so we created this crossbow widget. So before there were buttons on the bottom of the screen that had a damage modifier. So basically you could double your damage if you hit something with this projectile, and just your shoot button. Now we have, let me raise the camera up a little bit here. I remember the controls. Now we have this widget. If we drag upwards, it's going to do an uppercut. If we drag down, he's going to try shooting. If we drag to the right, it'll reload the magazine. If we drag to the left, you can switch your arrow. Now, if you're in combat mode, oh, we can't select that. If you're in combat mode, you're going to have a little bit different functionality. So, in order to get into combat mode, currently you have to select a target and notice the health bar or the map saving the state of the tree. Good to see that that actually works in a semi-live demo. Here's your uppercut. Here is your jab, and here is a power attack. Now this was added a little bit later in the year, and I'll get to that hopefully kind of shortly. Let me see here. So the user shop economy was created, and this was all in the first quarter of the year. So I talked about that already. That's where you're selling the chairs. And basically you're going to sell these over time. So chairs are going to sell at, let's say, 1 chair per hour, unless you advertise your shop or and this isn't in the game. Right now what's in the game is you put 1,000 chairs in the shop, and then every hour there's a probability that a chair gets sold. In the future, I would like to actually have the players be able to advertise and try to increase customer flow through the shop, but that is not in the game at the moment. But some of the things that were added is that each shop now has its own economy, so that means each shop keeps track of how much gold it sells, when it sells an item. Another thing that was kind of interesting to tackle was that the shops needed to sell stuff even when the phone was off and not running. So again, what I'm trying to encourage is that we want the player to come back to the game and get gold. So I want to encourage the players to keep opening the app, right? So basically what I had to do was store or calculate when all the items would be sold right away. And then when the player launches the game, it will check to see how many items should have been sold while the phone was off, and then it transfers that gold to the actual shop, and then the player can collect the gold from each shop's inventory. Now the gameplay is still pretty wonky and it's not fun yet, but that's kind of the direction I want to go. If it's not fun, then I'll just drop it from the game. Okay, so after the first quarter of 2018, I started playing with Reflection. I started modifying the water shaders so that the water looked a little bit better. I ended up sort of post. I don't want to say giving up on Reflection. I just sort of ran out of time and was spending too much time playing with the shaders, and it really wasn't adding that much. I don't want to say quality. It just wasn't adding content to the game. So I shelved the reflection stuff. The water does look better. Um, I'll probably run into a few enemies over here. Hopefully this looks okay. So what used to I should have rocks in here, and I updated this map, and I forgot to bring over the rocks under here. And this water should be considerably more blue. But it was looking better. You'll just have to take my word for that. Actually, I should relaunch this. So I reduced the geometry of the NPCs. One thing I was noticing is that the frame rate on my Galaxy S5 phone is much too low. I drastically reduced the geometry on NPCs. I removed their arms. So under each shirt, we were drawing the NPC's torso and arms, and that was mostly a waste. I don't have a solution for layering body parts. I think if we wanted this character to be shirtless, we would actually have a torso that was basically a shirt, but it was just his upper body. But anyways, drastically reduced the geometry. That helped a little bit with performance, and that actually became a very big priority for the end of 2018, and it's still a high priority into early 2019. But I didn't worry about it too much mid-year 2018. I mean, when I say I didn't work on it too much, it's always a factor while I'm building this app is can this perform on the phone, and where I think we can get performance gains. Let's see here. Another big thing. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Reduce geometry. Oh, actually, yeah. So mid 2018, I started adding level of detail rendering. Basically, as the player is far away from an object, we don't need to draw the high texture and high poly version of that object, and I can demonstrate that right here. Okay. UI looks awful. Probably not going to change anytime soon. Okay. So here we have a very, very low render distance if we look at the trees. As we get closer, we switch it with a higher poly version. Same with the walls. And actually, yeah, so these short walls, we don't have a low poly version, therefore the game goes, I'm not going to draw anything. But if we look at this wall back here, we'll notice it switch to its high poly version. Now, the game doesn't look good, that's okay. I'll get to that when the game actually gets fun. But this is all in order to just make the game run at a higher frame rate. Okay, so after the level of detail, and that was a pretty big project. Spiders, I added a ranged attack for spiders, which we saw a little bit earlier. They stun you, which is kind of annoying, and it's not very apparent. So in this box down here, it lets the player know he's stunned, but it's not good. That definitely needs to be updated. Trying to think here. Okay, we've added leveling up to the game. So down here, this bar right here is your level progress. Once you level up, you get to upgrade your melee damage, your armor, or your health, movement speed. And these are all just attributes I think the player would want to upgrade. Very little thought was gone into the gameplay. I just wanted to make sure that when a level up happens, the player can increase something. And again, I'll dial in the funness once I have all the tools in the right place. So one of the things I'm doing as I'm building this game is just trying to keep an open mind for what is fun. And sometimes I'll come across something that is totally different or something I didn't really think of. And then I decide this would actually be really good for the game, and then it gets added to the game. So I'm trying to keep an open mind about stuff. So that's why I have these kind of loose ideas. And as I progress further, I'm going to dial it into what's best for gameplay. Okay, so added leveling. So again, I added the foundation. That's mostly what I say when I add level. Or that's mostly what I mean when I say I add leveling to the game. Um, Items now have weight, so every time you get an item that has a weight attribute, and that's another thing that you can actually upgrade. Um, just past the second quarter, so the third quarter, I started adding the infrastructure for pets, and that was actually in the game for a little bit, where the player could have his own spider that, excuse me, that would follow you around. Um, and that actually had to refactor how a lot of stuff worked because the spider, excuse me, your pet, which in this case was a spider, is going to use a lot of the same AI that our bad guy NPCs uses. And so the bad guy NPCs, all of their actions are, or all of their objectives are separated into different actions, like a walk action, melee attack action. They all have different objectives. I want to be able to use those same actions in the pets. So I sort of had to refactor how some of the AI worked, and that went actually pretty well. But yeah, now we have the foundation for pets in the game. Ideally, they will increase your damage output, your carry weight as well. There are a few weird parts about pets. Excuse me. One thing that needs to be solved is that while the player flies, they can get over really big obstacles, and the pets need to fly as well. It's not a big deal. It's just something that it's a little weird because if you have a dog, right, he's gonna need a jetpack that follows you, and whenever you fly, he has to fly. Um, Not a huge issue. It's just something I haven't tackled yet. I actually think that'll be a fun problem to solve. So later in the third quarter, I started adding more LOD models. So the low poly trees, the low poly buildings. Um, this building right here was created by Uno Maestro, by the way. Forgive the awful texture. That was me. I applied a really bad texture to it in very hastily. This is Uno Maestro's as well. We're going to see some of Sweet Henrik's stuff in a little bit. Let me see here. Okay, carry weight, pets. Oh, okay. So in the third quarter, that's where we added a lot of the melee attack system. So earlier we had melee attacks, but one of the things that I wanted to do was increase the skill cap for fighting. It still felt, or it's something that this game has struggled with since pretty early on, was that you could just shoot kite, and you never really needed to invest in armor. So that's really why the melee attack was brought into the game. But one of the things that I added was an attack system where depending, I'm not saying this very well. I wanted a system where we could create combos. Now, when I say combo, depending what attack you did previously, your next attack could be more or less efficient. And I can demonstrate that here. Now, there is only one or two combos in the game, but I had to create a system that would support it. So that in the future, one of the things the players may invest in is buying a new combo or attack system, a series of attacks. And it's just really, again, to make the game more fun. So the first combo is, if I swipe left, look at how slow this power attack is. But if I jab to the right and then swipe left, it's much faster. So if you just keep going jab, swipe left, jab, swipe left, the player is going to deal more damage than just doing his power attack the whole time. You'll also notice that there is a action queue. So if the player starts spamming a bunch of attacks and then wants to move, they can't until they're done with their attacks. So that's something that may change in the future. Again, it really depends on what is the most fun. But I wanted a system that would be able to support that type of idea. So again, just getting the dials in place. I need to stop saying again. That's really bothering me. Moving onwards. Let's see here. Melee attacks, an attack system. Okay, so near the fourth quarter, so late in 2018, I completely split up this map here. So you'll notice as the player gets close to specific objects, obviously the a higher resolution or higher detail, higher poly object spawns. But this is the first map where everything is completely made up of low or high poly objects. The other map has a whole base map where the whole ground is one piece and then things spawn in and out of it. This one does not have that. Each of these little squares has its own collision mesh, which had to be revamped. Or it didn't have to be revamped, but it had to be tested. I wasn't sure if there'd be a performance hit. Because instead of having one major collision mesh for the map, now there's a whole bunch of small ones that determine if the player can or cannot walk where they are walking. Now, what's interesting about this is programmatically, it wouldn't be that hard to create a Minecraft-like game from what I have here. Since each of these pieces has its own collision mesh, there's nothing stopping me really from having the player destroy part of the ground in order to go to dig downwards. Now, due to project creep, I don't want to do that, but the programmer in me thinks that's a really, really fun idea. So anyways, a big part of the late 2018 was splitting up this map. It does look bad. There's a lot of, obviously, open seams and very quickly done. I imagine this whole map is going to be redone at least one more time. But mostly for the performance testing. And it looks okay. I still am not happy with the performance of the game. But there's a lot of... Yeah, I can go on about the performance. It's a work in progress. I'm confident I can get a much better frame rate on the lower or older devices. Now, I should mention I'm testing on a 5-year-old phone. So any new phone would be able to draw this without a problem. I shouldn't say any new phone, but I want all phones to pretty much be able to play this game. Okay, moving onwards. One of the things that I had to do, so if you haven't been on the stream before, I use Blender as my front-end editor. So this whole map right here is what tells the game engine where I want to draw certain things. All these little pieces that we see here are never actually brought into the game as a model. What actually happens is, if I hide some of these pieces, we create these little triangles that tell the game engine, hey, I want something spawned here. I want the player to be able to interact here. This right here passes, or this is actually a light. So it tells the game engine, I want you to spawn a light that is 80, 70, 70, and then I think that's intensity, so a slightly red light here. This right here is Merchant 4. He sells Steam stuff. This is the Forge and the shop, and here's your old man. But one of the things that I did is I created a script, because what I used to have to do was actually place these triangles for all the models. It was very, very tedious. So I created a script which makes creating maps so much easier. So that was pretty exciting. I actually didn't think I would get that I didn't think I would get that completed until 2019. So that's one thing that actually was quite a bit ahead of schedule, and I'm really glad I did it. I wish I created the script earlier because it really was not that hard. Blender did the guys who worked at Blender did a phenomenal job being able to script in the editor. And Python was way easier to pick up than I thought it would be. Okay, other than that. The next piece I had, you'll notice that the map is multi-tiered, or there are multiple levels on the game. This was actually quite a pain. Well, actually, the multiple levels were easy. One thing that I wanted to do was create a very sort of whimsical place. The environment was not very magical at all. So I sort of got the idea from Harry Potter, where they have the moving staircases, and depending on where a staircase was, you could get to an area at a certain time, or you couldn't, and you were sort of had to plan around wherever the staircase was pointed at the time. So that concept to me is really, really fun. So what I wanted is kind of a whole map of moving parts, and depending on where the player was, they could get to certain spots, and sometimes they couldn't, and create kind of like a puzzle in the game. Now, they don't have to go through this if they don't want, Um, but I think it's a really fun idea. So we're going to increase the render distance here. Also, in the end game, the player won't be able to fly as high as they want to. Excuse me, I'm still working on that, and this didn't spawn. I wonder if I. Oh, you know what? I took this model out for the 2018 build. Okay, I'm going to use a different object as an example. One thing you should remember, or whatever, I calculate my own collision meshes, and once we started animating the 3D models, I had to actually animate the collision mesh as well, and that was quite a pain. So we have different objects, some that move side to side, some that move up and down, and then some that rotate around like this one does. Now the rotation is not good yet. Oh, you know what? This is a shame. So due to performance issues, I had to sort of change how this works. I could actually adjust this code pretty quickly. But basically, around each 3D model, we draw a small cube. And then if the player's outside of that small cube, we don't bother checking collision. The reason why this is an issue is because when we create the small cube, we don't take into account the fact that there's stuff rotating around the big object. So as soon as the player gets outside of this range, he'll fall. This is solved, but it's just computationally expensive, so I pulled it out for the short term. Mostly because of that big object, which I was talking about, which is not in the game currently, was really, really large, so the game always had to check to see if the player was over that. Anyways, the player can, if I modify the code, it would take me like 5 minutes, can go up and walk on this platform. As you can see, the player is not rotating with this piece, so that's something that I need to actually do in 2019. All the other models that move side to side, up and down, the player will actually have friction sort of attached to them, and they will move with the piece. So this is the last piece that I need to adjust. It's just weird because it's rotating around a point, and I haven't taken the time to do, the calculations. So that was kind of a disappointing demo. Are there any other objects that I have? No. Another thing that I did do in late 2018. Well, first of all, that took forever to actually figure out and accomplish. Then later on, I added when the NPCs, I added a new attack for NPCs where they could tackle you. It would knock the player to the ground. Now, this actually added an external momentum to the player, so the player would fall and then he would slide across the ground, which looked really, really cool. This broke the collision logic, so while the player was standing on a platform that would move, that used the same add external momentum function that the spider's tackle attack did, or the NPC's tackle attack did, and that broke the bridge that moves sideways or forward and backward. So that needs to be adjusted in 2019, and that's another reason why I pulled that model from the game. Plus, it didn't really go anywhere at the moment. So hopefully that'll be done shortly. It's always a bummer when you fix something and then you have to fix it again because you added something else to the game, but that happens all the time. Simplified the tutorial, made the dialogue a little bit better. Other than that, that is pretty much it. But again, it's been a surprisingly productive year. It didn't feel like we accomplished that much. But I'm impressed. I'm very happy with what we accomplished last year. Let me see here. Oh, right. Let's see. So if I go to the crossbow, there's one other piece. I recently changed up the merchants, so I don't. This is my 2018 build. I don't exactly remember which merchant does what. Okay, this costs 300 gold. We don't need that. I need the arrow. 100 gold. Let's cheat quick. I added a particle effect to the crossbow. And that's kind of cool. I want to show how that looks. And I do want to thank the guys at Bad Logic Games for creating the libgdx library. They do a very good job maintaining it. One of the things that was very easy to add to the game was this particle effect that you're about to see. Go to the profile, gold. Okay. That. Oh, that's right. Now I need to craft it. So another thing that I adjusted in 2019 is that the player no longer needs to craft. Excuse me. They no longer have to craft arrows because that was kind of tedious and boring. But that was something I changed in the past couple of weeks. So I wanted to do this video before I actually push those changes. Let's see here. We're going to cheat again. Crossbow type. Here, I think this is a Steam cost. Damage, Steam, equipped. Don't know what this value is. Oh, you know what? We're going to cheat in another way. We're going to say this requires 0 materials to craft. Because I don't remember which of those variables is the quantity. Okay, so we're going to go to the forge. We actually get to craft some stuff, so I didn't think I was going to be able to show this. Forge, grab the bolt here, we're going to craft the item. Really? I must have fixed that. It's a shame. Alright, well, you're going to have to take my word for it or play the game. The fire projectile looks pretty cool. Not worth 10 minutes of a video cool. But it does add to the game. You will also notice that on the side here, I'm actually drawing some stats. ERC 3D is meant to be percent 3D. So this is how long it takes to draw every frame. Right now, on the computer, it's taking 1 millisecond to draw a frame. Most of it is spent drawing 3D objects. Once we get to the phone, we'll notice that like 90% of it is spent drawing 3D objects and 10% is doing calculations. Recently, I've optimized this, but if you're curious what that number is, that's what that is. I probably should have started with that. I'm not redoing this video. So yeah, here's the stats on what it's drawing. Over here we have instances, 297. That's the number of 3D objects in the world. 242 is the number it's actually drawing right now, and obviously we have frames per second. On top of that, we've updated the Steam bar, the health bar. I still want to update this widget. It doesn't look very good. Here's how we fly. We have thrust, gravity, etc. So yeah, like I said, it's been a highly productive year, surprisingly productive year. I just want to give a special thanks to all the Twitch viewers who hang out. Shadow, Sweet Henrik, That Bonsai, Uno Maestro, Super Brute, Black Mark. Really appreciate you guys hanging out. It's been a blast. Hopefully 2019 is as good or better.